meditating monk told people not to wake him up for 75 years. This is what happened next. Immortality has been one of the most sought-after ambitions of humanity since time immemorial. Challenging fate and living on forever seems like an impossible idea that is only fit for fantasy and fiction. But what if some mystical men have already achieved it? In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Dashi Dorje Tijilov was a Buryat Buddhist Lama. He was born in 1852 in the countryside of Buryatia, and his parents abandoned him at an early age. He then pursued sheep rearing to sustain himself. At the age of 15, Tijilov joined the Aninsky monastery and began his spiritual education. He learned to read Tibetan and Sanskrit and studied many Buddhist texts during his lifetime. After becoming a religious scholar and the leader of Russian Buddhists, he raised money to provide food and clothing for World War I soldiers. When he became a revered Buddhist Lama, an astonishing thing happened. One day, he sat in a lotus posture and asked his disciples to visit him. He instructed them to visit him again in 75 years. Then, he asked them to chant a special prayer of the afterlife. But his disciples didn't dare to utter it in the presence of a living being. So, Tijilov himself began to read the prayer, following which his disciples joined in. According to believers, Tijilov then began an endless meditation. They believed that eventually, he attained a state of nirvana. In 1927, he was buried in a pine box, in the same lotus position that he had been sitting in. In 1957, the box was unearthed, and scientists couldn't believe what they saw. Tijilov's body was remarkably intact. Studies conducted on his body showed an astonishing observation. His body had no signs of decay. There was no smell, and his skin seemed intact. His weight had not changed much either. After a change of clothes, Tijilov was buried again, only to be unearthed in 1973. The body remained very much intact. Since 2005, all the studies on his body have been suspended due to the instructions of another Lama. Since 2002, Tijilov's body remains above ground permanently, behind a glass casing. The surprising condition of his body has become a matter of deep curiosity among scientists. However, Tijilov isn't the only monk who plunged into deep meditation. In 2015, scientists discovered another mummified monk in Mongolia, almost 200 years old. The monk was discovered in a lotus posture and covered in animal hide. Some Buddhist academics claimed that the monk was alive, in a deep state of meditation. The body was almost completely intact and seemed to be a Lama or a Tibetan Buddhism teacher. Another expert claimed that the monk might have been in a rare spiritual state known as tukdam. Some believe that he might have been the teacher of Dashi Dorje Tijilov. The past and truth about both the monks remain a cryptic mystery. The quest for immortality hasn't escaped in any culture around the globe. Diane de Poitiers, who was a French noblewoman and courtier, was considered really beautiful. She became King Henry II's royal mistress and advisor. She practically controlled everything that happened in court. It is believed that she is the only royal mistress who managed to achieve such an intensive influence on the king. Surprisingly, even at the age of 50, Diane looked very young and beautiful. She was immortalized in several paintings and sculptures. But how did she manage to stay young? This secret was revealed several centuries later. When scientists dug up the remains of Diane in 2009, they discovered unusually high levels of gold in her hair. They theorized that the lady regularly took drinkable gold to preserve her youth. However, it is quite likely that this potion was the very cause of her illness that ultimately took her life. Another man to strive for immortality was Alexander Bogdanov. Alexander was a Russian scientist, revolutionary, writer, and thinker. In his book, Alexander believed and wrote that transfusion from young people could help rejuvenate aging bodies. Many high-level officials supported his weird theory. At first, his experiments seemed to be quite successful. According to some witnesses, he himself experimented with his theory and started to look younger. But during his 11th attempt, Bogdanov's body rejected the treatment, and he lost his life. The idea of preserving the human body through cryonics eventually caught up with people. So far, more than 2,000 people have applied for cryopreservation procedures. So, the quest for immortality continues and remains a tantalizing mystery.